everyone, as you're joining. We'll get started in just a minute or two.
So wonderful to see you all.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to My Jewish Learning. We are here for a three-part series on grit and grace, spiritual wisdom for growing older. And we're here with Rabbi Dayle Friedman, who I will introduce in just a minute. Alrighty, welcome everyone to our three-part series called Grit and Grace. Rabbi Dayle Friedman, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you everyone for joining, whether you're on Zoom or on YouTube. We're so glad that you are here. I'm going to introduce our teacher briefly before turning it over to you. Rabbi Dayle Friedman is a spiritual guide, social innovator, chaplain, and scholar who has dedicated her career to bringing meaning and radiance to aging. Recent publications include Jewish Wisdom for Growing Older, Finding Your Grit and Grace Beyond Midlife, and Jewish End-of-Life Care in a Virtual Age, Our Traditions Reimagined, that was just published, which she co-edited. Her Philadelphia-based national practice, Growing Older, which is at growingolder.net, and I'll put that link in the chat in just a moment, offers spiritual direction, spiritual care, and consulting on caregiving, dementia, and end-of-life care. So I'm going to just put that link in the chat. And there are also some readings and a source sheet that will be used, and I'll put those in the chat as well. You also should have got them in an email today. There was some reading, but don't worry if you didn't get to the reading ahead of time. We will be discussing it today. So thank you, Rabbi Friedman. I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Julie. What a very exciting opportunity to be with you all this afternoon, this evening, or this morning, depending on where you are. Please drop into the chat just like Joan did. Where are you? And what's brought you here? Why did you come to this session of all the many things you could be doing with your time and all the many places you could be in cyberspace? And while we're doing that, I just want to add a piece to my bio, which is the hot news that I didn't even give Julie, which is that I am going to be, as of next month, the interim rabbi in Congregation Beit Chaverim in Atlanta. And I have to say that because some of our members are right here on this call with us. And someone is here from New Zealand, I just have to say, which is pretty super cool. I'm assuming that you're here because you're either growing older or you know someone who is. Is that true for anybody here? Yeah. I think we can all claim it. I once went to an aging conference. Maybe some of you who are in the field might have seen this before, but I only saw it once, but I've never forgotten. Somebody was wearing a button that said, "Aging, aren't we all?" And that's who we are here. We are aging, and it doesn't matter if you're 27 or if you're 87, we are aging. So I've been trying to figure this aging thing out for a very long time, starting with when I went to college and started volunteering with people in a retirement community, and then accompanying elders as a chaplain, and then teaching vibrant elders. And I've been trying to figure out a way to characterize this journey of later life. And I have to say that when I started this pursuit, aging seemed very exotic and far away. And now I have to say it is, they say in Yiddish, non ter wie weiter. It's nearer than it is far. I am turning 65 this year, so I can, if by any measure, claim myself to be part of the club. I see aging as a spiritual journey, and I would like to offer today a Jewish framework for that journey and some practices that I think can help us to find meaning and resilience in the aging journey. I want to say that it's not simple to characterize the path beyond midlife. I find that it's easy to go one way or the other. It's easy to say, oh, turning older is all about losing and it's about decline. Or, oh, later life is a time of new opportunities and you can reinvent yourself and you can become what you've never been and you can add new chapters to your life story. And all those things are true. But what I hadn't found was one narrative that held it all. And that's what I've really been searching for. So I want to, just by way of beginning, this is what we're doing. From brokenness to repair, a spiritual vision for the path beyond midlife. Just to say that there's so very great a variety in the ways that people deal with the journey of growing older. And I'm just going to give you a few examples from my contacts and practice. So there's my neighbor, Betty, who is 88 years old, and she is known all over the neighborhood for her distinctive appearance as she walks for miles every day, swinging the cane she carries but refuses to use. When Betty had the most recent in a series of surgeries, she recovered well enough to walk more slowly and less far. But Betty is furious, consumed with rage and complaining constantly about all the things she used to do that she can no longer enjoy. Her husband and kids are suffering with her and from her. Then I want to tell you about my friend Jeff, for whom the professional career was everything. When he retired, he invented a new life. He took up painting and became a serious student of Musar, Jewish ethical teachings. Jeff revels in his passion and engagement even while he cares for a sick wife. I got muted, sorry. Jeff is grateful that both painting and Musar have given him what he calls a new angle of vision. This is my late mother-in-law, Miriam, of blessed memory, who was a Holocaust survivor who died at, quote, close to 90. She wouldn't tell anyone how old she really was. In her last few years, Miriam could easily have been lonely and bitter. Gone were her sisters, her husband, and most of her friends. Gone was her ability to get out and visit her grandchildren, nieces, and nephews. She rarely left her home because of pain and multiple chronic illnesses, and yet Miriam loved her life. She was treasured by her family, and she was busy because she, as the rabbi said at her funeral, worked the phones. Miriam had dozens of friends and relatives with whom she had regular phone calls. And when she spoke to somebody on the phone, it wasn't so that they could check on her. It was so we could get her wisdom, because she always had a wise piece of advice or a good saying from her mother to share. And when Miriam died, she died looking forward to the next simcha. How can we understand this awesome and magnificent journey in later life? What explains how some of us flourish, like Miriam and Jeff, but others founder amidst its challenges? Throughout my encounter with aging, I've been searching As I said, how can we hold these paradoxes? On the one hand, the hard parts, the brokenness of being old and frail, are not without surprising opportunities for wholeness. And on the other, I resist the temptation to characterize the healthy years, like the ones I'm in, as all uplift, growth, and adventure. So here we go. Shattering and rebirth. I want to draw on a teaching of the Kabbalah to offer us a framework for the path of later life, in an effort to conceive of the complexity and paradoxes of this entire swath of life. I'm going to suggest practices and habits that can help us to foster wholeness and grit and grace on the journey. So here's what we learned from Rabbi Isaac Luria, the great mystic sage of 16th century Tzfat. According to Rabbi Luria, the world we have, the life we live, is born out of shattering. According to Luria, in the beginning of time, all there was God. But apparently God was lonely. God wanted to share the beautiful majesty of creation. So God wanted to create human beings and create a world, but God filled the whole world, so that couldn't work. So God had a strategy. God withdrew the divine presence and made some space into which God intended to shoot God's light, and that would be the world. So in that space were vessels that were meant to contain the light, but there was a cosmic accident. I always say, we have a saying, man plans and God laughs. Well, in this case, God planned, and I don't think we're laughing. But what happened was those vessels that were meant to contain the divine presence couldn't hold it. They shattered. And the light that used to be everywhere, that used to pervade the entire world, became scattered and hidden in sparks that were encased in shards of those shells that had held it once. So now in the world that we live in, the divine is now limited and concealed in a world of darkness. Our human task is to find and liberate and lift up those sparks of the divine, and thus bring repair, which in Hebrew is tikkun, and redemption to this broken world, olam. So the phrase tikkun olam that you may have heard in connection with righteous action and social justice work really comes from this cosmic task of entering darkness, finding light, and lifting it up. So I'm going to now try to show you how this teaching might apply as a template for later life. So we're going to see how shattering, and tikkun, redemptive repair, can play out along the way of later life's journey. So first, shattering. We know all too well that in later life, shatterings are rampant, inevitable, and recurrent. So if you will, I'm going to invite you to type into the chat, what is a shattering of later life? Just type something that you can think of. Illness, losing parents, losing a spouse, losing your husband at 43 years, loss of loved ones too soon, losing my vision, yes, our capacities, unrealized dreams, inevitable losses, loss of friends, loss of mobility, arthritis, being alone, loss of identity from job. I used to know who I was. I had this role in the world, and now I'm retired. Who am I? The body begins to something, facing death. Loss of a child. Yes, if you live long enough, it's very possible that you're going to experience a loss that's out of the order of that we expect. Loss of the sense that life goes on and on. Yes, that phrase I used before in Yiddish, non ter wie weiter, it's nearer than it is far, is often used to refer to death. And one of the things that happens as we reach the milestones of later life is that horizon is not endlessly stretching out in front of us. We know that our time on this earth is always finite, but now we really are starting to get it. Children moving away. We are so geographically dispersed, and this last year has taught us more than ever how hard it is not to be with our dear ones. Others' perceptions of you as being old. I assume that means in some way a loss of status or a loss of respect. Needing to move to be near children. Change of engagement. Yes, I have seen this with my mom, who was an incredibly active and engaged person, and she has gradually let go of many, many engagements. And Amy writes loss of a child. There is nothing more searing and no shattering more complete than losing a child. Yes. The onset of dementia. Yeah, if we live long enough, that's going to be us too. Not everyone, but most of us. Getting stiff. Yeah, do you ever hear yourself get up from the chair and notice that you're krakzen, that you're groaning? Too much time on one's hands, no plan. Regrets. Yes, we're going to actually talk about that next time. We're going to talk about regrets and forgiveness and healing the past. Falling on ice. Oh boy, just the sense of vulnerability. That loss of invincibility. Losing my pets. I heard somebody say, who was in the aging field, that they asked their mother-in-law, how do you see yourself in this aging thing? Like, you know, how do you conceive of yourself? And the woman said, I think I'm on my next to the last dog. So that is a marker for us. Fear of not being able to drive anymore. Yes, in this crazy world, we equate being able to drive with agency in every way, independence, poverty. For many people, the plans that we made were not enough to hold us. Wondering if life was lived to the fullest. Yes, that questioning. Have I lived right? What can I do about it now? Loss of do-overs. Wow. Erectile dysfunction and constipation. Don't be ashamed to say it. Okay, Blanche, I'm saying it. Good for you. It's not all pretty, right? And you know what Betty Davis said. Growing old is not for sissies. So all of these are shatterings. The invisibility of older women. Tolerating and being impatient with our own mortality. Not keeping up with technology. Yes, that is absolutely something that this year more than ever in our lives perhaps has been a dividing line. You know, they used to talk about the digital divide between the haves and the have-nots in society, but this year the digital divide was between people who knew how to use technology to connect and who didn't. There were many other divides, don't get me wrong. Okay, so you all have named, I'm sure, all of the shatterings that I would have named, and I think we want to move beyond shattering. Oops, I did that wrong, sorry. Stop share. Here we go. Okay, so here you'll see the ones I thought of, and you'll see how that we're on the same page. But we have arrived at Tikkun. I'm not leaving you in the shattering. Repair and redemption in the new creation. We are wounded by shatterings, but we're still alive. Our life as we grow older is thus a new creation, one that emerges out of the shattering. What I like to say is that later life is a series of births out of brokenness. Any one of these shatterings you mentioned is an inflection point at which we really have an existential choice. The choice is, will we remain in darkness, or will we seek the sparks of light hidden within our new reality? This, I believe, is what Rabbi Luria meant by Tikkun. I am not as naive as I might seem. I am not deluded. I have met many people who cannot get past a shattering, and I know you have too. People who remain forever immersed in darkness, despair, and bitterness. I'm teaching a class for rabbis on gerontology, on aging in the Jewish community, and I gave them an assignment to write about an older person in their lives and what they'd learned from them. And the one that I read today was someone who said that her grandmother had been depressed her whole life, had not been able to take pleasure from life. And when she got Parkinson's disease, she added physical pain to the already existent emotional distress that she lived with. And this young woman said it made her realize that the lesson for her was to take care of her mental health now, when she was a young mother and had recently suffered from postpartum depression, that she wasn't going to let a pattern develop lifelong that would catch up with her in her old age. So that woman, that grandma, could not get past the shatterings of whatever happened maybe early in her life. But I have also seen, and I know you have too, those who reach for the light. Some of you, no doubt, fit that description. And if you're that person, I want you to just give yourself a big hug. When we seek and locate the light, we can become elders in the truest sense of the word. Now, this word has been a little cheapened, I think, in contemporary society. I'm trying to bring it back. In the Talmud, the rabbis say that an elder, zaken, stands for zekana chokhmah. This is the one who attained wisdom. So if you're an elder, you automatically are presumed to possess wisdom. Now, we know that's not universally true, but that's how you're supposed to be held in the social realm, as someone of value, someone who has what to share with the society. So what are our jobs if we do become elders? I'm going to quote a great teacher of mine, Bill Thomas. Bill Thomas is a physician who started out his career after Harvard Medical School as a medical director of a nursing home. And he went there and he saw that this way of taking care of people was nuts. He saw that people were cut off from society, from nature, from other people and other generations. And he's been struggling to reinvent elder care over the course of his career. And then to look more broadly as what does it mean to age? So he has a book that I really love that I put on your resource sheet called What Are Old People For? How Elders Will Save the World. And Bill Thomas says there are 3 roles that elders can play in society. And this is what we're working for, becoming elders. The first is to be conveyors of wisdom. Yes, we're told, according to Jewish tradition, that the elder has attained wisdom. First of all, we got to make sure that we're actually doing the work of becoming wise. But secondly, we have to figure out ways to be able to convey that wisdom to others, to share it. Okay. I think I skipped something. So besides that, just one more thing to say about conveying wisdom. Mary Catherine Bateson, who was the daughter of Margaret Mead, who died recently, said that what we need to be acquiring or honing in later life is what she calls active wisdom. She says active wisdom is when we're capable of wise doings, not just wise sayings. Then we also want to be transmitters of legacy. We want to be focusing on what have we learned? What were we on this earth to do? And thirdly, according to Bill Thomas, we want to be peacemakers or change agents. And there's been some really exciting work organizing elders as change agents that's happened in the last few years. Groups of elder activists. In Philadelphia, some of the staunchest protesters of injustice have been groups of elder activists who've sat vigil, who've gotten arrested, who've done all kinds of acts to help to change the world. So the question is, what can help us to seek and find the sparks? It is not automatic. Oh, I have to just quote Susan in the chat who said, "This elder just wants to have fun." Wow. I guess we have to look at the whole of our lives. And I don't know about this particular person or any particular person, but we do want to say, maybe you were really, really, really engaged and working hard to change the world at another point in time. And maybe this point in time is for fun, is for appreciating, is for being. One of the things Bill Thomas says that I love is that in childhood, our mode of existing is pure being. That's our predominant mode, is we're just being. We don't have agendas. We are able to just be and enjoy and experience. Then we become adults, he says, and adults are very busy. They're way too busy to just be. They're all about doing. And in later life, as we become elders, once again, we have an opportunity to move into being as a more dominant mode. And that's partly why elders and kids connect so profoundly, because elders and kids share that capacity to be. And Thomas says something really profound, which is that culture is passed from elders to younger people over the heads, right over the middle generation, the adults. So that tells you something very interesting about what's the role of elders in the Jewish community in terms of Jewish continuity and in terms of transmitting tradition and wisdom. The middle generation's just way too busy to be doing that. Okay, but we need to focus on what is it we're going to do? What are the practices that we can engage in that are going to help us to become elders? Because we've got to work at this. So the first one is to let go. Let go of whatever it is that doesn't serve us. Let go of stuff. How many people feel buried under by the stuff we've been schlepping around our whole lives? And how many people don't want somebody else to have to be the one to clean it out? How many people just don't want to be able to have to take care of all that stuff anymore? That's one thing to let go of. Another thing to let go of is time commitments. You know what? Maybe all that busyness is not what we want anymore. Maybe we want to have a little bit more what I call white space on the calendar, a little bit more ease, a little bit less skidding from thing to thing. Maybe we want to be discerning and really do winnowing of what really needs to stay on our agenda. And of course, maybe we want to let go, as someone said in the chat, of regrets and resentments and to practice forgiveness. And we'll get to that. Okay. Second, confront our fears. In the losses and shatterings of aging that I was able to catch, and among the many, many, many wonderful things people said in the chat and scary things, were fear of the future, fear of becoming more disabled, fear of dying, fear of not being in control of our lives, fear of dementia. I want to say that these things that we fear don't get easier if we avoid them. My experience in working with older people, with aging people, is that actually going into that darkness, confronting the fears, thinking about what it will be like, planning, communicating, just being with and acknowledging our own fears is actually comforting. It's a strange thing to say, but it's more comforting to enter that darkness than it is to push it away. And that's a big job. It's a big and a really important job to confront our fears and to acknowledge them and to make friends with them a little bit. And one of the things that will help us to do that is whatever spiritual practices we have. If we have a meditation practice and we can learn to be with what we're feeling for even a moment before we bolt. Pema Chodron, the meditation teacher, says never underestimate the human propensity to bolt. We humans like to avoid discomfort, but if we can learn to be with discomfort or learn to be with delight and just to be, that will be helpful. And for some of us, developing our prayer life. You know, many of us know prayer as something that happens out there in the synagogue. Maybe it's something that the rabbi or the cantor does, and we kind of are along for the ride. But we have a deep Jewish tradition of talking to God. And I want to suggest that this is something to really explore as a resource to be able to have an intimate spiritual connection and not be afraid of it. Okay, here's a big one. This is number 3, I think, of 7. Practice interdependence. The late Maggie Kuhn, who founded the Grey Panthers, was an incredible elder who believed in doing social change in partnership with youth and elders. And Maggie Kuhn, when I met her, was in her late 70s. She was crippled by arthritis. Her hands were gnarled. And she couldn't do many everyday tasks for herself, even though she could change the world and be an incredible advocate. So she said, we need to stop thinking that we are independent or we are dependent. She said, we are all interdependent. We are all in a weave of relationships of being dependent upon and depending on others. And only when we accept interdependence can we realize that we are more than our deficits and our needs, and that we can be in beautiful human relationships of interconnection. And the thing I like to say about this, and the task that I offer you, is practice asking for help. I'm not kidding. Practice every day asking somebody for help. Maybe it's in the supermarket and you can't reach the top shelf. Maybe it's at the gas station and you can't figure out how to put the gas tank cover on. Maybe it's with your Zoom and you can't make it be right. I have been practicing this for a long time, and I have almost never been refused by a stranger to help me. And in fact, I think people actually like to be asked to help. It's ennobling to be able to help another. Okay, practice number 4, say hineni. And we're going to talk about this in our 3rd session. Figure out what it is that calls you now. It might be a continuation of things you've done before. It might be something totally new. But say yes to the call to be engaged somehow, whatever that looks like for you. Number 5, Always keep learning something new. This is my mom. She's turning 90 in June. And this is a watercolor that she painted. It's the second one she's ever done. And she painted it with her caregiver. She had no idea she could do this. And she is so delighted with herself. And everybody who sees it is pretty delighted too, that she's found this new pursuit that is challenging and compelling. And you see the smile. So here are some other examples. Okay, number 6, transmit a legacy. We talked about this a little bit before, but your legacy might come through tzedakah, charity. It might come through mentoring. It might come through an ethical will, telling someone who will live after you what you've learned in this life and what's most important, what you hope for them. And finally, oh, I love this picture. Talk to old people, they know cool stuff. Talk to young people, they know cool stuff. Okay, finally, practice gratitude. This is actually a practice that can help us to be vibrant elders. A 77-year-old community leader that I knew once told me, when I asked, what is it like to be your age? She said, as I see it, there's only 2 choices at this stage of life. You can dwindle. You can become ever narrower in your focus, in your interest, in your connections, or you can be grateful. She said, I choose the latter. And this woman had an incredible, vibrant old age, but maybe not all that much later than after I heard her say this. This woman got a diagnosis that a cancer she'd had years before recurred. She decided she wasn't going to go through an excruciating round of treatment. What she wanted was to say goodbye to all of her grandchildren. What she wanted was to tell them that she loved them, to give them each a significant object, and then to go. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. She had a dignified and peaceful end. And I'd like to think that that cultivating of gratitude, choosing to be grateful, was what enabled her to then accept when the end was near. I want to tell you about my sister Jill of blessed memory, who died 6 years ago at 61. She was a powerful person, so powerful that she wrote what she wanted to be read at her funeral. You feel like a hand from the grave. She was going to make sure that we all got her last message. So here it is. She said, my gratitude journey began when my father-in-law was dying of lung cancer. Dinner in our house had become an opportunity for complaining about all that was wrong in the world. Then one day, I happened to see on, it was Oprah's TV show, a program on gratitude. With all that Oprah has, Jill wrote, she takes time every day to write in her gratitude journal. And I saw that somebody here wrote that they keep a gratitude journal. Oprah interviewed a breast cancer survivor who was grateful for getting dressed that day. I realized, said Jill, then and there, that our family was focusing on the wrong thing. That very night, we decided to begin each meal with what we were grateful for that day. This little act was transformational. Somehow, after gratitude, life didn't seem that bad at all. And I continued to practice gratitude while I was ill, counting my blessings instead of sheep at night. I had so much to be grateful for. It gave me strength, and I was content with my life, even through the most difficult of times. And I want to just add the coda, which is that my late sister's son has 3 little girls, the eldest of whom, Ella, is almost 4. And when I FaceTime with Ella, she says, What are you grateful for today? Because that's what they do in her house every day. Every day they say, what are you grateful for? So this little 3-year-old girl already knows that that's a really powerful thing to do. Imagine if she does that every day of her life until she's a very old lady. Won't she be an amazing elder? Somebody asked if the points that I shared are on the handout, and I believe that they are. So I want to do a grand conclusion, but I want to give a little time for questions. Julie, what time do we need to close up?
We need to close up at 5 minutes to 4.
Okay, so we have about 6 minutes or so for questions, and then I'm going to give you a blessing. So can people unmute themselves? Or Julie, how about if you call on people who raise their hand?
Great.
In all of these pages of people.
Folks can use the virtual raise hand if you can find it, or if you can't find it, you can send me a chat that you have a question. And I see that Barb, go ahead, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. This has been very good, and but I just want to add one little thing from Rabbi David Kaminsky in Plattsburgh, New York, and he has taught me something through losing a son, 2 husbands, best friends. He taught me to look for that little moment of joy each week, not to look for big things, just little moments of joy and collect them, and they help.
Barb, that is so profound. That is just absolutely beautiful. And that you were able to hear and heed that advice is amazing. Thank you. I see Carol has a hand. Do you see her?
Carol Friedman, Carol Cohen.
I've got Carol Mamlock.
Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, there we go. First of all, thank you very, very much. This has been terrific. I would like to know, would it be possible during the next 2 sessions to do any kind of breakout sessions so we get to interact, a breakout room to interact with others? I realize there's 290 people on here, so it might be, a bit daunting, but just a thought. That would be wonderful.
I would love to see us do that. Julie and I will talk, and we'll see if we can make it happen.
Thank you.
It is hard to be amid this sea of little squares of fantastic humans. Someone else says no to breakout groups. Well, that's why it's a challenge. But any other comments, questions?
Joyce?
Could you tell us where the readings are? Because I noticed that a number of other people besides me said that they haven't seen that email and don't have those resources. And I would love to have them.
Sure. Let me repost those in the chat. They should be on the email that you got the Zoom link to come here today. They're connected to that email, and we'll also send them out in a follow-up email after class. I believe that one will go out tomorrow. So look for that one if you did not see the other one, and I'll post it now.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, I saw a question in the chat, which I'd like to respond to because I think it's such a great question. Karen Davis asks, as a once active person, how do I go from doing to being? There's a lot of letting go in there, isn't there, Karen? And part of that letting go process, I think, is grieving. Even if it's partly happy, to be able to grieve the losses of the engagements we had and don't have anymore. But part of it is also cultivating. One thing it's been called is creative solitude. What does it mean to find the juiciness in just being? To find what might be there when we slow down and discover how rich a single moment can be. So I think it's both. This is my answer to almost everything. Curiosity and compassion. I think, in the movie The Graduate, the guy said that the answer to everything was plastics. I think the answer to almost everything is compassion and curiosity. If we can have compassion for ourselves, for experiencing a loss, for being scared about making changes. And if we can be curious, oh, what might this be like? So thank you for that. Somebody asked about ongoing groups. Janice asked about starting local groups. The Institute for Jewish Spirituality came up with, under the leadership of the late wonderful Rabbi Rachel Cowan, wise aging groups, and they trained leaders. That work is around somewhere. I'm not quite sure in what form, but if you look at jewishspirituality.org and get in touch with them, they might be able to tell you how to access the training, which was fantastic. And people have developed wise aging groups all over North America, I know. And on my resource sheet, in addition to putting a book that I wrote, I have the wonderful book that Rabbi Rachel Cowan and Dr. Linda Thal wrote called Wise Aging. Other questions, comments? We have time for one or two. I live in an environment of only Gen Xers, says Sheila, and Gen Zs. How can I still feel relevant among them when they see me only as a cool old lady, but don't value my knowledge and advice? Wow, what a good question. And it's not just Sheila's question. This is a cultural question about the segregation of cohorts and about the inexperience that people who are younger now have had with people who are older, even though Ivy, I think it was, wrote that her children used to come to the nursing home where I was a chaplain. But many people grow up and they really haven't had a lot of contact with older people to know that that cool older person is also a resource to them. So in our communities, I think we need to consciously focus on bringing generations together in ways that are mutual and reciprocal, not just cute kids, cute old people, but how do we take advantage of the gifts of older people to contribute to needs in the community? How do we help younger people to learn that older people have those gifts? So that's a big one, but really, really important. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Hope you can see this. And I want to offer you this blessing for growing older. And I hope that we will see each other next week and be able to continue this conversation. I really value all of your passion and wisdom and raw honesty. And that's what makes for a good learning environment. I wish we could talk, in more ongoingly and more in depth, but I'm so glad to be with you all. So here's the blessing. May you see the blessing in all your days, notice beauty and sweetness and be amazed. May you love without bound, ever feel God's surround. May you mend and tend, may you learn without end. May you see the blessing, may you seize the blessing. May you be a blessing in all your days. Now, there's actually a verse to that, and I have to just quickly find it. Give me 1 second because I want to give you the whole thing. Okay, here it comes. Sorry about the wait. Here we go. How many adventures you've had on your way, delights to be sure, also loss and dismay. Your vision has broadened, your heart opened wide. Your wisdom deserves to be prized. May you see the blessing in all your days. Notice beauty and sweetness and be amazed. May you love without bound, ever feel God's surround. May you mend and tend, may you learn without end. May you see the blessing, may you seize the blessing. May you be a blessing in all your days. You know now what counts with the rest you are through. You hold paradox and see gray, it is true. No more playing safe from your core, you'll not fear. Treasure this moment, it's dear. May you see the blessing in all your days. Notice beauty and sweetness and be amazed. May you love without bound, ever feel God's surround. May you mend and tend, may you learn without end. May you see the blessing, may you seize the blessing. May you be a blessing in all your days. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I turn you back to Julie.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Dayle Friedman. This has been truly wonderful. And I know that a lot of people here are looking forward to the next 2 weeks, so we will be back to learn more with you. We are meeting for 2 more Mondays at the same time and the same Zoom link. Please do look for the follow-up email from us. We will attach the source sheet of reading materials, and those are readings that we'll be using also next week. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everyone.